So again, friends, welcome. I know that there are some on the call tonight or on this that were not here on Tuesday, but I think it's good for all of us just to kind of do a quick review. So this is a very traditional Buddhist sutra within Mahayana Buddhism. This sutra, like other Mahayana sutras, has a different flavor than what are called Theravadan sutras, the Pali sutras. It's much more elaborated, and it's much deeper. And as opposed to all the Pali sutras, suttas, in which the audience are always kind of living people, monks and nuns and laymen and lay people. In Mahayana sutras, it's much vaster. So you get the sense from what the Buddha is saying that he's surrounded by his most senior, most developed, 1,200 of them, monks. They're all arhats. They all have a certain degree of realization, as well as there are many, many great bodhisattvas, great enlightened beings. So it is truly a very august meeting that the Buddha is teaching to. But fortunately, there is a very human element there, somebody that we can identify with. That gives us hope that we too can enter this realm. And that is the Buddha's first cousin Ananda, who's also a monk, much loved for his kindness, his sweetness, and he has a photographic memory, so he remembers what the Buddha teaches. But on this day there is a gathering. There's soon to be a vegetarian feast offered by the local king to the community, and Ananda is missing. And through the Buddha's omniscience, he sees what's happened. Ananda sort of stepped out of the usual protocol of always going on his begging rounds with fellow monks. He has been alone, going from door to door, and he came to a door that was a brothel, and one of the young women there was very taken by him, and so he was in the process of succumbing. I guess in a certain sense you may succumbing to her seductive charms, but the truth is he was really succumbing to his own conditioning. So he's there. He sees this young woman. She's probably attractive, so his eyes see, and the response is pleasant. It's a pleasant looking at her. But he doesn't just stay noticing a pleasant person. He's attracted. He moves toward. And as his embroilment with her deepens, he finds himself in her bedroom. So it is at this moment that the Buddha, in his omniscience, sees what's going on, sends his trusted bodhisattva Manjusri very speedily to rescue Ananda because again, he's a celibate monk, he's taken vows, so before he goes down that path that he's been led to by his own conditioning. So this is important to see that Ananda is like us. Even though at a certain level of our development, we might say we've made commitments, We know right from wrong, we know what wholesome from unwholesome is, etc., etc. Yet we often find that when certain aspects are triggered within us, we may find that we move often quite speedily to the unwholesome. And so this is what's happened, but he is rescued, and he is brought back along with the young courtesan. The Buddha says, bring them both back. He wants to help them both. And when as we learned last time, when Ananda is brought back into the presence of the Buddha, he's feeling deeply ashamed. He's very sensitive. He starts weeping in sorrow. He's very regretful. And he realizes that even though he has a very good mind, and even though he's heard the Buddha teach, and even though he's learned the Dharma, and he's very erudite himself, he knows how to help others with the Dharma, he himself does not have a deep practice. And that is also sort of why he's weeping. Because like us, we may experience the same thing. That even though we have been exposed to the teachings and we've read the teachings and heard Dharma talks and, we have practiced somewhat, we perceive as diligent, yet somehow at a deeper level, we have not crossed over and are truly able to live consistently by these teachings. So Ananda's dilemma speaks to us, and his, the fact that he doesn't feel good, but he's willing to acknowledge the problem. And then what happens, and it happens now for a lot of the sutra, we see how the Buddha teaches. He doesn't just give sermons. He gives lots of examples, but he also asks Ananda a lot of questions. So, and along the way, when Ananda gives the wrong answer, as Ananda continually gives the wrong answer, the Buddha will correct him, but then ask more questions. So his style of teaching, I think, is very revealing, because he leads Ananda along a path with this kinds of questions that elicit kind of wrong answers from Ananda, and then the Buddha sort of allows that wrong answer as an opportunity to correct and continue to lead him on. The Buddha knows where he wants to take him, but he's allowing Ananda to kind of stumble along, at his own pace, sort of, kind of breaking through his own barriers. So when he finally gets the kind of, where the Buddha wants to take him, he's there because he's kind of untied his own knots getting along the way. And actually, as we learned last time, another time when Ananda breaks down in tears, he admits that one of the reasons he's been lazy in his practice was at some deep level, he thought his close relationship with the Buddha, somehow the Buddha's enlightenment would rub off on him, and like he didn't really have to do all the work himself, you know what I mean? He would kind of, being in the Buddha's presence and being his relative, he sort of, he could start out like, 60% of the way there, and when he realized that this was not the case, that he was really ultimately responsible for his own awakening to the truth. Again, it was a very powerful moment to him. And so the Buddha, as we learned last time, he begins where many of us who've been on retreat and other things have begun, which is the Buddha does not castigate him. The Buddha does not make him feel guilty. The Buddha does not focus on his moral lapse or his lack of commitment and all that. The Buddha begins to unpack sort of the deeper meaning of what he felt, why he fell into what he did. So he holds up his own fist as an example, but it really relates to the young courtesan. So he holds up his fist and he says, do you see this? And Ananda says, yes, I see it. And the Buddha says, do you see it with your eyes or your mind? You see, and he also refers to Ananda, one of the reasons he followed him was because the Buddha had such great radiance. And, it's like, did you see it because of your eyes or because of your mind? And Ananda admits, even though the eyes were the portal, it was my mind that saw your radiance. It is my mind that sees your incredible signs of Buddhahood that are on your body. And then the Buddha does something very special. He says to Ananda, he basically says, where is your mind? Right? And he uses location. Because anything that, so Ananda believes he has a mind, right? And it was that mind, connecting through the eyes that, sees the Buddha, sees his mineral radiance, led him to follow him. It's the same eyes that, saw the courtesan and was led into her chamber, you see. It's the same eyes, but he admits that behind the eyes is his mind. And so the Buddha says, oh, well, okay, obviously you have a mind. Where is it located? And what we now have is Ananda logically proposing where his mind is, where it's located. And again, I won't go through it because we went through it before. He first proposes, it's in my body. And so, I invite all of us to look in your body. Can you find your mind? Something called a mind located in your body. Because that would make most sense. Well, since my eyes are in my body, then my mind must be in my body. And Ananda could not find his mind in his body, so then he proposes that his mind must be outside the body, since, the Buddha, he thinks is outside of him, and since he can see him, well, my mind must be outside of the body. The Buddha takes that one apart. Then Ananda goes, well, perhaps my mind is in my eye. That's why, that's how my mind connects with what it sees, and the Buddha takes that one apart. And then Ananda kind of reconsiders that maybe he's really off, and he reconsiders, where the mind is, and it goes on and on. So basically, he can't locate the mind, but he then proposes that the mind sort of just comes into being according to causes and conditions. The Buddha takes that apart. It's maybe in the middle. The Buddha takes that apart. And finally, he proposes that the mind has no specific location. So he's getting warmer. But the Buddha even takes it different. He says to even postulate that your mind has no location is still to postulate that there's some thing, some self-existing thing called my mind. And again, I invite everyone on this call to go through this introspection. This is a very profound introspection. It leads one into deeper realms, right? Because we all have a fundamental, deeply, deeply ingrained belief that we are a thing, and everything is a thing, and thoughts are things, and minds are things, and bodies are things, and everything is a self-existent thing. A thing is something that has characteristics, right? That can be discriminated, this thing from that thing. And the Buddha is trying to show us that the way we think about things, the way we conceptualize things, may not be how, I hate to say things, but how things really are. And so to enter this realm that the Buddha is trying to bring us into, this indestructible realm of the Surangama Samadhi, the Buddha is trying to get us out of these constructs of how we see and perceive ourselves and the world. And so after this exercise, which if you remember, left Ananda totally adrift, totally dumbfounded. It's like, what? I thought I was really developing this mind of mine. It's the mind that saw the radiance in you and led me to follow you, and it's what's kept me on the path, and it's blah, 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 blah. And now you're telling me I don't have a mind? What? You know what I mean? And everything I postulate, about what my mind, where it is, you're telling me doesn't exist, and it can't be found anywhere, and it can't be found nowhere, and it's like he can't believe that there's anything outside the realm of his ability to conceptualize. And I think all of us know that very well, right? We all know that very well. So we are now listening in very carefully, right? And so again, yesterday the Buddha was talking about outflows, and Ananda outflows, again, a very key concept. In other words, sort of like when Ananda was attracted, this awareness of this young woman and this pleasantness arose, and yet it arose because he had allowed his mind, whatever it is, to flow out and grasp at an object of his senses, in this case, something he saw. And the Buddha said it is this endless outflowing, we might say, of our mind that's endlessly flowing out and engaging with the objects that we see and the sounds that we hear and the things we taste and the things we smell and the sensations in the body and our thoughts and our feelings and our perceptions. This mind of ours is endlessly flowing out and getting entangled in this world that appears to our senses and that we conceptualize about. And again, he makes that very strong statement that people who are seeking enlightenment, seeking understanding with their thinking mind are like a cook boiling a pot of sand, hoping to make a gourmet meal. Right? He said, no matter how long you cook it, it'll still be sand. You will never have something tasty. And as long as we are trying to understand that which cannot be understood with the intellectual mind, we will never really get into the deeper realms of mind. And then the Buddha he does a little teaching. He basically introduces something along this line. He says to Ananda, it's basically, there he calls them two fundamentals of our reality. He said, one is this so-called mind that you are living your life with. It is the mind of thought. It is the mind of language. It is the mind of conceptualization. It is the mind that discriminates this from that, me from you, up from down, right from wrong, in from out. Endlessly, it discriminates, it divides up, it separates, right? It creates difference. He said, this is one mind. And he said, then there's another mind, which is your true mind, that makes no distinctions, that is beyond birth and death, that is unborn. Unborn means it never dies, it just is, and it is out of which all this phenomena, all this, everything that arises, it is arising from this true mind. And that this true mind fundamentally is the mind that we want to experience, we want to recognize, and then we want to live from. It's like a shift of foundation. And he says, the Buddha says, the reason we suffer is because we've lost track of our original mind. Right? And we are just lost in the world of our own fabrication, made out of our thoughts, made out of our concepts, made out of our ideas, made out of our all the emotional afflictions that have come because we've entered this world, the world of our own fabrication, the world of our own labeling, trying to create something and of happiness or meaning or stability. And because it never works, it eventually all breaks down, it all leads to dissatisfaction, it all leads to emotionality. He said, this is why sentient beings wander, endlessly wander through all the various mind states, the happy ones, the unhappy ones, the pure ones, the impure ones, the altruistic ones, the selfish ones. Endlessly revolving. And there's no way out other than to endlessly revolve. So he's going to posit that there is another way, and it has to do with this fundamental line. And again, here the Buddha says to Ananda, the reason why so many practitioners in the world do not succeed in putting an end to the outflows and becoming arhats or awakened, even though they've gone through all kinds of meditative training, is that they are still attached to their distorted mental processes that are endlessly coming into being and ceasing. Right? Endlessly coming into being. And they mistake these endless processes for that which is real. And he says to Ananda, the Buddha says, That's why even though you have become quite learned, you are not a sage, which means you don't have wisdom, because you don't really know the nature. You are just cycling endlessly within the realm of cognitive knowing. And the Buddha then refers to, that sentient beings, we have these two major obstructions, right? Because of our delusion. See, our delusion is sort of twofold. It has to do with the inner misperception, and we might say the outer misperception. The inner misperception that we all have is that we ascribe this whole inner world of feelings and thoughts and memories, what's really called our storehouse, which means, the whole repository of experience, of memories, so this whole vast unconscious storehouse of experience, we take it to be me. This is me. As if there's a me that's a solid thing that is made up of all these things, you see. And so this fundamental internal sense of a me is our fundamental internal misperception, which leads to the kleshas, which is all the emotional coverings. The angers, the fears, the despairs, the disappointments, the envies, the jealousy, the doubt. All of that emotionality are just further covering up this true mind. Right? And then the other obstruction is that outwardly, when we look out at the world and we see things, we hear things, we smell things, we taste things, we believe that all these things exist independent of our mind. So we think they're real. And so we are endlessly grasping at them, attaching to them, pushing them away. We're endlessly busy manipulating the external world and all our sense objects, somehow thinking that this is the way to happiness, or this is the way to stability, or this is the way to peace of mind, or this is, we're endlessly lost in these two obstructions. Okay? And yet, simultaneous to all of this, unchanging, is our true mind. Pure, undefiled, uncontaminated, the source of everything. See, it's out of all phenomena and all thoughts are arising out of this true matrix of our mind, natural awareness. But because we have these fundamental misperceptions, we are just distorting. So we can't see. Right? Again, it's, there are many analogies that the Buddha uses. So, now we are in the next section, which is called the nature of visual awareness. So I think because seeing is such an accessible experience for all of us, the Buddha is now going to introduce us to what we might call this fundamental awareness. Which is not contaminated. This truer mind of ours. And so the Buddha, he uses the act of seeing, and he basically says to Ananda, so he holds up a fist. So maybe everybody hold up a fist. And, the Buddha says, well, he's holding up his fist, he says to Ananda, what do you see it with? Well, I see it with my eyes. Oh, okay. I'm using my eyes to see the fist. And so the Buddha says, so you are aware of my fist because of this awareness that is coming through your eyes. So if you close your eyes, now you can't see the fist. What do you see now? And the Nanda says, I don't see anything. And the Buddha says, no, you see blackness. Seeing, even though the eyes are closed, even though you are blind, the awareness of seeing is still here. And the same way he says, so please know that in the analogy I'm giving you, that if you light a lamp in a dark room, and now you see everything, it is not the lamp that sees, it is your eyes that are seeing, right? And in the same way, the eyes are sort of like the light, but it's our mind that is actually seeing. And the eyes are just like, a light in a dark room. It can go on, it can go off. But if you're in a dark room, you're looking around, you see the darkness. You turn on the light, you see all the objects now in the room. So the light has gone on and off, but your awareness is always here. So he's beginning to teach Ananda about his awareness, his true mind. And then he takes him through instructions. The first one is visual awareness does not move. But before he does that, again, let me just say, he says, after my awakening, I went to Deer Park, where there were these 5 monks that I used to practice with. And and he asks them, in what particular at that time caused the 5 of you to awaken and become sages? Because we are told that these are the 5 fellow ascetics who had left him when he went off to cultivate, meditation, and they had left him thinking he had, kind of wimped out of the ascetic path. But then when he showed up and found them later in the Deer Park months later, they could see that he was very different, and he led them all to awakening. And the first one stood up and says to the Buddha, I was the one who you gave the name Ajnata to, which means the one who understands, because I came to realize what visitor and dust signify, and this way I became a sage. So this is a very famous, and many of you have heard me refer to this, but this is very important. The Buddha is giving a very important teaching, which really has the power, if we really understand it, to really free us of so many things. So he says, world-honored one, this is what he's calling the Buddha. Suppose a visitor stops at an inn for the night and takes a meal. Once his stay is ended, the meal is finished, he packs his bag and he goes his ways. He's not at leisure to remain. But if he were the innkeeper, he would not leave. By considering this example of the visitor, the one who comes and goes, and the innkeeper, the one who remains, I understood what the visitor signifies. He represents transience. This is very important, okay? Each of us need to look deeply into our minds and decides what is it that stays and what is it that endlessly comes and goes. Right? So our eyes, coming back to the example of our eyes see. During the course of a day or a lifetime, we are seeing thousands, tens of thousands, millions of things, right? They arise and they disappear. 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 And yet, our awareness stays. This is important. Because if we identify with the guests who are always coming and going, no wonder we're agitated. No wonder we attach and avert. No wonder we try to hold on, because we are believing that these things that are endlessly arising and passing are me, are what's true. But really, only thing that's true is that which is aware. And we can say the same way with sounds. Endlessly, from morning till night, from birth till death, endlessly hearing all kinds of sounds. They're the guests. They come and they go. They come and they go. They come and they go. Smells, tastes, bodily sensation, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, memories. Right? All day long, coming and going, arising and disappearing, arising and disappearing. Right? The innkeeper, what's the innkeeper in charge of? The innkeeper's in charge of the inn. The innkeeper makes sure that the inn is clean, is hospitable. Right? Right? And every day, there are new guests. When they come, he or she takes care of the guests, then checks them out. Right? Doesn't dwell on it, doesn't hold on to it, doesn't say, oh, please stay, stay, stay. So, hope you had a good stay. Bye-bye. Stop a second. Think about the things that are arising and passing. Close your eyes a minute. All day long, things are rising and passing. Sights, sounds, smells, tastes, bodily sensation, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, memories, emotions. How many guests pass through your mind every day? Every week, every month, every year of your whole life. And if you ask yourself, has there been one constant thing that has stayed with me? The only thing you could say is that which is aware. So the Buddha says, or no, I mean, Ajnata says, so I understood from the analogy of the Buddha's about the guests and the host or the innkeeper, that this really represents the transiency of all phenomena. Right? The external phenomena that appears to the senses, and the internal phenomena that appears to the mind, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, memories, etc. All of it is transient. Right? Transient, 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 just passing through, arising and disappearing, one after the other. What is it that stays? Who is the innkeeper here? Do you know your innkeeper? Who do you identify with? Do you identify with the innkeeper, or do you identify with the guests? Where's your focus? This is what he's saying. And then he gives another analogy. He says, again, suppose the morning skies have cleared after a rain. Then a beam of pure light from the rising sun may shine through a crack in the door to reveal some motes of dust obscuring the air. So, we've all seen that, right? All of a sudden, there'll be sunlight, and all of a sudden you'll see the air, the space is just filled with dust motes, right? Mm-hmm. And that those dust motes will obscure the air a bit. And he says the dust moves, but the air is still. Thus, by consideration of this example, the dust, which as it moves obscures the air, and it is the air which in and of itself is always still. And I understand that what the dust may signify, which is motion. Right? So this is we'll see, this is really very important. Because he says not only does all phenomena have this transiency, this arising and passing, this instability, it also has this, it's also things are in motion. And if I am focusing just on the dust motes, I see a lot of movement. I see motion. But if I asked you, the space, the air, the space in which the dust motes are in motion, is that space in motion? Just close your eyes and ask yourself, what is in motion? You might say, look, the air is in motion. Is the air in motion? Is space in motion? Or is it just the dust motes that are moving about? The Buddha liked what he said. And then the Buddha does he's really interesting. So once again, he holds up his fist, and everybody hold up their fist in front of their face. And he says, and the Buddha said, Ananda, again, Ananda is his foil, right? Poor Ananda, it's sort of like, like a magician or something, has somebody, calls up, this is Ananda. Okay. So the Buddha makes a fist, and he opens his fist, open your fist, and he closes it. And Ananda says, well, I saw the Buddha before everyone, the assembly, open and close his hand. All right. Now so the Buddha says, yes, you saw me here before the assembly, open and close my hand. Was it my hand that opened and closed, or did your visual awareness open and close? So just watch. What's moving? Is it your hand that's moving? Or is it your awareness, your visual awareness that's moving? In terms of your visual awareness, is there any difference between a closed hand and an open hand? Has anything changed in terms of your visual awareness? Is there really any movement in your visual awareness, your awareness of who you are? Mm-hmm. And then the Buddha, because he has great powers, all of a sudden he holds up his hands and he sends out a shaft of light that goes whizzing by Ananda's. And Ananda turns his head and looks to the left. And then the Buddha sends out another shaft of light that goes whizzing by Ananda to the right, and he turns his head. And the Buddha says, "Why did you just turn your head like that?" And he said, "I saw the Buddha send forth a wondrous ray of shining light which flew past me on my right. Then another ray flew past me on my left. My head moved as I looked to the right and the left." Ananda, when you glanced at the Buddha's light and moved your head to the right and left, was it in fact your head that moved, or was it your visual awareness that moved? World Honorable One, it was my head that moved. The nature of my visual awareness is beyond even stillness. So how could it move? The Buddha says, so it is. And then the Buddha says, speaking now to the whole assembly, everyone needs to understand that whatever moves is like the dust, and like a visitor, does not remain. Just now you saw that it was Nanda's head that moved, while his visual awareness did not move. It was my hand that opened and closed, while his awareness did not open or close. How can you take what moves to be your body and its environment, since they come into being and perish with every successive thought? You have lost track of your true nature, and instead you act out of delusion. Therefore, you have lost touch with your mind's true nature. By identifying yourself with the objects you perceive, you keep on being bound to the cycle of birth and death. So the Buddha is using these very simple demonstrations to help Ananda, and therefore everybody else who was watching in, see that all this movement, all this change we see going on constantly within us and around us is not who we are. Fundamentally, we are this pure, undefiled awareness, in which all of this is arising and passing. But because we misidentify, and we just follow the movement, we follow the motion, we think things are happening. We think things are changing. But in terms of who we really are, and our own true nature is the true nature of every being, of everybody's mind. When Ananda and the Great Assembly heard the Buddha's teaching, their bodies and mind were serene. They realized that since time beginning, they had strayed from the fundamental true mind. Instead, they had been mistaken about the conditioned objects of perception and had made distinctions about what are in fact nothing more than shadowy mental events. Interesting. Shadowy mental events. A shadow has no substance, does it? We see a shadow, remember like kids, they see their shadows and they think it's something real. I got to catch my shadow. The shadow is just an impression, just a play of light, play of sound. What is language? Sound. That's all it is, sound, sound, sound. But we imbue it with great significance. And so we go up and we go down based on our perception of sounds, perception of sights, perception. Same way with our thoughts. Thoughts have no substance. We'll be learning more about that. They're endlessly coming and going all day, nonstop, one after the other. Right. But what is this mind that these thoughts and feelings and perceptions are arising in? Who's the innkeeper and who are the guests? What is space and what are the dust motes? They all awakened, and each was like a lost infant, suddenly reunited with its beloved mother. This is now they've come into realization. They're coming home. What a relief, you know? Can you imagine a lost infant being reunited with its mother? How would it feel at that moment, right? It felt so lost. It felt so alone, right? And now it's reunited with its mother. It immediately feels what? Safe, at peace, not missing anything, right? It really speaks to this kind of deeper existential, aloneness that is so pervasive, even when we're connected with other people. With other people, there is this sense of our aloneness, our separateness. So the Buddha is showing us a way home. And the way home is right here. So we want to begin to, this is the beginning, he's teaching us meditative practice. How to reverse the outflow. Come back home to our own natural awareness, to let go of our endless attachments to the phenomenal world, which is just appearing in our mind. Everything we see, everything we smell, everything we taste, everything we touch, everything we feel, everything we think, everything, they're all appearing in our mind. Nowhere else. And what is the nature of this mind? Do I know my mind? Do I know that in which it appears? Do I know the innkeeper? Do I know the one that always stays, that never moves? It's always here. Well, a few more minutes. It's also interesting. Then the king was there, King Prasenajit. And he said, before I was instructed by the Buddha, he was under the instruction of two other contemporary teachers, who were not, they were kind of against the Buddha. I mean, their teaching. Both of them said that after this body dies, we cease to exist and become nothing. That very nothingness is what they call nirvana. Now, though I have met the Buddha, I still have doubts that make me cautious. How can I come to realize the true and fundamental mind that neither comes into being nor perish? Because he was, remember, hearing from these other teachers, well, it's just a vast nothingness, Please answer me. And then the Buddha, again, lots of questions about impermanence. He said, the Buddha says, you haven't perished. How do you know your body will perish? He asked him a question. Well, my body's impermanent, subject to decay. How do I know that? Because I can reflect. I can see that my thoughts fade away and flow. They're constantly dying. They're forever coming into being. I can remember that when I was young, my skin was fresh and smooth, and I was full of energy when I was in my prime. Now old age presses upon me. My body is withered and weary. My vital spirits are dulled. My hair is white, you see, just like this one's. My skin is wrinkled. Not much time remains for me. So I can see how I am changing. And the Buddha keeps questioning him, yes, about all these subtle transformations. Didn't happen overnight. They happened, day by day, month by month, over time. And the king says these changes happen day by day, and if one contemplates this deeply, one can see that there is ceaseless change from moment to moment in each successive thought. Thus I know that my body will keep on changing till it perishes. And then the Buddha says to him, remember his original question about, when my body perishes, is there anything that remains? Remember, these other teachers said, no, you just enter a nothingness. So the Buddha says to the king, observing these changes, these never-ceasing transformations, you know that you must perish. But you know also that when you perish, something in you does not perish with you. So those of you who wonder what the Buddha's teaching might have been about continuation of life in some form, please pay attention. So it says, do you know that which within you which does not perish with you? And the king put his palms together. No, I do not know. I will now reveal it to you. And the Buddha says, King, when you first saw the river Ganges, the most famous river, how old were you? My mother took me there to pay respects to the goddess when I was 3. Now, Your Majesty said that when you were in your 20s, you had already aged compared to when you were 10. Year after year, month after month, day after day, you kept saying, you're aging, now you're in your 60s. Consider, though, that when you were 3 years old, you saw the river. 10 years later, when you were 13, what was the river like? To be honest, it looked the same when I was 13 as it did when I was 3. Even now, then I'm 62. When I'm aware of the river, it looks the same. And the Buddha says, now you are mournful that your hair is white and your face is wrinkled. Your face is certainly more wrinkled than it was when you were young. But when you look at the Ganges, is your visual awareness any different from your visual awareness when you saw the river in your boyhood? No different, word honored one. Your Majesty, your face is wrinkled, but the essential nature of your visual awareness has not wrinkled. What wrinkles is subject to change. What does not wrinkle does not change. What changes will perish. But what does not change neither comes into being nor perish. Then how could it be affected by your being born and dying? You have no need to be concerned with what such people as these ascetics say, that when your body dies, you cease to exist. The king believed the words that he had heard, and he understood that when we leave this body, we go on to another. He and all the others in the assembly were elated at having gained a new understanding. So again, I think that's interesting. And he's saying something that for many of us is very difficult. What is he saying? Right? In a certain way, while many changes have occurred, physically, we look very different than when we were 3, no matter how old we are. Right? And our thoughts are different. And our feelings are different. And the way we look at things are different. There's been lots of changes. But that fundamental awareness is no different than it was when we were 3. When we were 3, we were fully aware and present, just like now. So what is the Buddha saying? Once again, in a different way. Are we the innkeeper or are we the guests? Are we space or are we the dust motes? It's really, who am I? What am I? And as we will learn in these coming weeks, this is not like an idle philosophical question. This is probably the most important question that we need to resolve as human beings. Who am I? Am I this endlessly bifurcating, endlessly arising and passing, endlessly all the phenomena I see? Is this who I am? Always reacting, always responding? Or am I that which is what? Unmoving. Always here. Always available. Never changes. It hasn't diminished. It hasn't accelerated one iota. So he's pointing to, again, this distinction. Who am I? Am I this constructed mind? Constructed of thoughts and perceptions? Or am I something much more wondrous, indestructible? Who am I? Who are you? It's the same question. So on that on that note, we will end. So for those of you who are reading along, we are in the section on the nature of visual awareness, and we have just finished the first couple of chapters. We're ending the next chapter. Is called The True Nature of Visual Awareness is Never Lost. So good. I hope this has been interesting, stimulating, provocative. Again, I'm leaving out a lot. Please understand that poor Ananda goes from one dumbfoundedness to the next. So if you're feeling like, what is he talking about? I'm more confused now than I was. We have Ananda to but he's getting better. If you could read his response, the light's beginning to dawn on him. It's just very hard for him. He's so identified with his thinking mind. This is hard for him to. But we can all do it. So thank you, everyone. Let me just share the merit. Whatever benefit, merit has come to us this evening from our reading of the Surangama Sutra, may it be shared equally with all whom we encounter, whether near or far away, and may its effects ripple continuously to aid in the healing and transformation of the world. So just a reminder, we will not be teaching next week. Actually, Angie and I are taking the grandchildren for a week, so we'll be otherwise occupied, but we will resume the following week teaching. So again, there is a free PDF of the Surangama Sutra online by Charles Luke, and so that's available for free. This is quite large, the book, but if you're interested, you can buy it. I forget how much money it is. What? It's about $30. So it's you have to be. That version's online for free also, with the commentary, with the full commentary. Yeah, but they parse out what's the sutra and what's the commentary. So this translation by the Buddhist Text Translation Society is really based on a new translation, but almost a line-by-line commentary that this Chan master out in California did. And I guess the original is online, but it's like 10 volumes or something. Yeah, but it's set up online where you can click each chapter, so it's very mapped. So, but Brian is saying but it's set up online that you can actually click chapter by chapter, and it distinguishes between the actual text and his commentary. Okay, so that's available also for free online. So anyhow, thank you everyone. Have a good evening.